What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Big Six Podcast, CBS Sports NFL Podcast. Will Brinson here, along with Leger Douzable. It's a Tuesdays sans Brady. Brady Quinn not with us today.
Without Brady.
That's all right. Yeah, that's all right. Brady's I don't know what he's doing. He's got stuff. He's probably busy. He's a busy man. Today we're going to break down what we would do if we ran the NFL. Schedule release is tomorrow, so that's Wednesday night. We will be doing a recapping the schedule release show. So make sure and subscribe, rate, review. You get the alerts and whatnot on the YouTubes. I believe myself, John Breach, and Tyler Sullivan will do that. And then, as we mentioned on Monday's show, after that, we're going to hit pause for a little bit and actually enjoy the NFL, the break that is the NFL. The off season, dudes. I mean, it's like
quote unquote off season.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL. I think that they actually do sort of give June as a time off, but not really. I mean, we're really 8 weeks from training camp. I mean, it's pretty insane how fast everything moves in the NFL.
Yeah, and when you look at it, I think, and that's the beauty of the NFL. They've kind of transformed this thing, Will, where it's a year-round sport now, right? Because you talked about it. Usually this is kind of like the dead time. Because even when July or late June, early July, even the GM, the head coach, they get away from the building, right? Because they know this is their only true break before the season, for it's like a 6-month grind period, right? So usually there's a little, bereavement or a little lack of news. But then again, it's been a weird year, Will, because when you look at the current free agent pool, and for people who don't know, usually 3 waves of free agency, right? There's the one that starts right in March. Then there's the second tier guys, right before the draft. And then there's a third wave after the draft. And that usually happens as you lead up to training camp. And there's still some big names out there, Will. So it's like you said, this will be the quote unquote downtime, but look for guys that are top tier starters that are still out there to potentially sign to teams. And that'd be big NFL news.
Well, yeah, and a lot of that is one because of the compensatory pick formula. Teams care a lot more about that than they used to. They want to make sure they get, or in most cases, most teams want to get as many comp picks as they can, and by delaying it until after the draft, you can sort of navigate that. And then two, some of these guys, we saw with Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins last year. It's they don't want to do the voluntary OTAs. They know if they wait to sign.
They don't even want to show up the first 2 weeks of training camp.
Right, exactly. So you can sort of push that back a little bit, but for us, yeah, I mean, this is the stretch now where there's minimal time. I mean, God, I do remember though, and I mean, I wasn't working at CBS then, but I remember I was working at Fan House writing about the NFL. I mean, the draft used to be on Saturday. They just been knocking it, ripping through the NFL draft on Saturday. As recently as I've been covering the league, which is just wild because it's impossible to fathom the league not using the draft and every tentpole event. They pushed back the schedule release. We talked about it yesterday, probably for negotiation purposes. But yeah, I mean, it's we get everything all year round with the NFL. By the way, your boys, the Jets, Aaron Rodgers. It was announced by the NFL. I was literally
about to segue into that.
Yeah. Before we get into what we do if we were Roger Goodell, I'm curious what you think about Rodgers opening up on Monday Night Football, I believe, for the second year in a row, this time on the road, out in California, playing the 49ers. Do you almost wish the Jets would just open up at 1 o'clock on a Sunday?
Man, I think every Jet fan just wanted a regular 1 o'clock game opening week. Right. The NFL is comical in a way, Will, because it's almost like TNT. We love drama, right? It's all about storylines. Aaron Rodgers opens up in front of a packed house, MetLife. I think it was one of the most viewed Monday night games in NFL history last year versus Buffalo. And 4 plays into it, he's done for the year, right? Not only that, it's a little interesting that the guy that was sacking him on that play happens to play for the 49ers now, Leonard Floyd. There's storylines galore. Last year, Rodgers started the season on Monday Night Football, got hurt. This year, he started on Monday Night Football again. And the guy, and it wasn't Leonard Floyd's injury. I want to preface that by saying that. It wasn't his fault Aaron Rodgers got injured. But the guy that sacked him when he did get injured is now playing for the 49ers. So it is just the storylines for the NFL literally write themselves.
The NFL may have been invested, though, in making sure that Rodgers wasn't out on the MetLife turf with like misty rain on a Monday night. Like, all right, let's get
They
this
could have
guy
made
on
that
some
game at
grass.
4:00 though. Like, it didn't have to
Yeah.
be Monday Night
I
Football.
know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, that's for sure. And look, the Jets have had a quieter offseason than the one they had last year, but that doesn't mean it's been entirely quiet. We talked about the Chiefs and the Ravens on Monday's show. I'm trying to think, what was the other? Oh, they announced the first Thursday night game is going to be Bills and Dolphins.
Yep.
The first Amazon Thursday night football game.
But yeah.
So
then
it's kind of interesting.
Week 2, the Chiefs game versus the
Bengals and Chiefs. Yeah. So that's right. So we know the Chiefs will get the Ravens at home, and then I think they're at the Bengals.
No, I think they're at home again.
Yeah, they're at okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's interesting for the Bengals because it's an early test. The Chiefs are getting 2 AFC North games out of the way. Like 2, and look, you get all that time to prepare for the Ravens, and then you get the extra time to prepare for the
3 days to prepare for
the
Chiefs. I mean, the Bengals. Yeah. So it's interesting, right? Because people will say, the NFL's after the Chiefs because they're going for the 3-peat. But I'm like, if you're the Chiefs, you love that because of what you just said. If you look at their schedule, they have the NFC South, which a lot of people assume is going to be the worst division in football. But then they also have the AFC North, which everybody thinks is the strongest division in football. And they get to get those 2 teams early in the season. And for people that don't know, Will, like the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season is a fill-out process because the way that teams conduct training camp, a lot of their front line guys don't play in preseason games. So essentially the first 2 or 3 weeks is kind of like preseason for a lot of these teams, especially with the extra game and you're getting 17 games now. So that's why a lot of times in September, you see sloppy football, right? Teams will come out slow. Now, Andy Reid has always been synonymous with having great Septembers. Actually, every month is great for the Kansas City Chiefs, but more specifically September. So if you're Patrick Mahomes, yes, this is 2 gauntlet games, but you love this because you're hoping that the Bengals aren't where they need to be at the time. You're hoping the Ravens aren't where they needed to be at the time. And then you look at the rest of your schedule, it's favorable, right? Because you're probably getting the 2 toughest teams. Now, again, the Browns are a team that need to be reckoned with because of their defense, right? And anytime you can run the football as well as they've been able to run it. But then you get Pittsburgh, who we don't know who's going to be their starting quarterback. We know it's Russ right now, but could it be Justin Fields? And then again, the AFC West is not as strong as it used to be in years past. And then you get the NFC South, Will. So I'd rather start off with the harder teams because it's an even playing field because everybody's working through things in the beginning of the season. Where if you get a team like week 8, 9, or 10, they're full steam ahead, Will. That's where you're going to get them at their strength. So I think people will say, like, the NFL's after, the Chiefs. But if I'm the Chiefs, I love that we got the 2 hardest games early, get them out the way, and it gives us the best chance to win.
By the way, Patrick Mahomes, 15-4, 56 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 8.4 yards per attempt, 68% completions, 5,904 yards. I believe that averages out to 310.7 yards per game. All but that yards per game is his best stats by a month. That's in September for Patrick Mahomes in his career. It's the best month by far in his career. It's been a narrative over the past few years. And I think, you can make the case with all the, sort of the personnel change. Rashee Rice probably going to be out September. We're probably going to have, a little turnover at the wide receiver position. But yeah, I think if you're the Chiefs, you love getting the Ravens and the Bengals early on. You stack 2 wins, you win those 2 games,
or even if you split it, like again, you're not playing them late in the season.
Yeah, well, and it just gives you. Let's say, I think you could easily argue the Ravens have more turnover than anybody else this offseason,
sure. Especially
and the Bengals have had slow starts just because Joe Burrow hasn't been healthy. He's coming back from that wrist. So you'd much rather get Burrow in September than December. And so now if you're the Chiefs, you win those 2 games and suddenly you have like massive leverage and edges in terms of the tiebreaker for the AFC playoffs. So
yeah, and let's not forget, Joe Burrow has been the one quarterback that's had Patrick Mahomes' number. So like you said, why not get him earlier where we've seen a history of Joe Burrow and the Bengals kind of struggling out the gate. We saw it last year as well. And you stated he's coming off that wrist injury. We'll see how much that affects him with his throwing hand because when it first happened, remember, he couldn't even grip the football. So, we'll see how that affects him going forward. So, yeah, if I'm Mahomes and the Chiefs, bring it on. I love that we're playing these 2 teams early in the season because, like you said, for one, we're almost unbeatable in September. Now, they did lose the opener last year to the Lions, right? So, Kadarius Toney, played a part in that.
I mean, he probably should have lost, right? Kadarius Toney,
with the drop pass and Brian Branch pick 6. But if you're the Chiefs and they didn't have Mahomes or Chris, at D line, so that played a role in that as well.
For sure.
Not Mahomes, but Travis Kelce and Chris. And
yeah, I mean, exactly. Like the Chiefs are much better positioned to start out hot
for sure.
Coming out this year. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we will play the role of Roger Goodell and fix some things around the NFL. Next.
The PBR World Finals continue Saturday on CBS Sports Network.
Time to get up now.
All right, dudes, congratulations. In a stunning turn of events, you have been hired to replace Roger Goodell as the NFL commissioner. You probably are not your first move is probably to be like, hey, you can end this podcast now because I'm making $25 million a year and I'm gonna go do some other stuff.
Got enough on my plate already as commissioner.
That's right. I mean, it might be like $40 million actually. I don't know why I think
it's up there.
Yeah, I mean, look. By the way, just as a quick aside, I think it's interesting how 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, but really when he was, with the Tom Brady stuff and the Deflategate and all that, I mean, like Roger Goodell was universally loathed. I mean, he's booed every year. I feel like the Q rating for Goodell has kind of swung the other way, where people kind of like Goodell. I don't know what he's done to come across as more of an everyman, or he knows he's maybe on his final contract, or I don't know. He's been less like evil overhead figure in the.
He's showed his personality a lot more these last few years. I would agree with that. I think the thing is, fans are hilarious, right? And the fact that once one thing is synonymous with you, they're gonna hold that over your head for the rest of your life. So it's just like people may not even dislike Roger Goodell, but they're almost accustomed to booing him at the draft just because it happened after that Brady year. And now it's like we have to keep it the same. And I love that Roger kind of feeds into it, like. He kind of waves on the crowd when they're booing him and stuff. But I'm like you. I don't even know if people dislike him. I just think he's synonymous with it now. So people are going to do it every year regardless now.
Yeah, I mean, what Jets fans did it for years at the or they were just – I think Jets fans were just booing the draft because nothing good ever happened in the draft. It'd be Radio City. They'd just be booing it,
That 2022 draft was amazing for the Jets.
That's true. No, I mean, back in the day. Let's pretend you're Goodell. You get to do one thing. What's your one big thing you're making, the one big change you're making with the NFL?
So, Will, as I sat back as commissioner of the league, I thought about this a lot. And one big change I thought about making was just to eliminate Thursday night football altogether. But then I thought about it and I was like, we're in the money-making business. That would not benefit us as the NFL. No. So since I can't throw Thursday night football games out, let's give the players 2 bye weeks, right? Because now we're already talking about playing on Thursday nights. Then we got to play during the holidays on Thanksgiving, which is Thursday. Now there's going to be a game on Saturday, which leads to a game on Wednesday for Christmas, which, again, the study shows it's hard to recover, especially that late in the year for players. And we've seen the injury rate kind of muddle up and down in regards to guys playing on Thursday, especially late in the season. So if we want the best product out on the field, let's give these guys another bye week, extend the season by 1 week, maybe even 2 weeks to split it up, to have the bye weeks. That way we get the best product on the field. Maybe you get your first bye week by, week 6, everybody has to take a bye week, and then you get another one by week 14. Everybody has to take it by then. And I think that would really benefit, the league and a better brand out there. So again, I went back and forth because I had to take my player helmet off, my commissioner helmet on. And I was like, I can't, just throw away Thursday night football. That doesn't benefit us. We're going to lose a lot of money if we do that, because people generally do tune in for Thursday night football, no matter who's playing. It could be 2 of the worst teams in the NFL. People are still going to tune in. So instead of taking away Thursday night football, let's add an extra bye week. And I know there's been preliminary talks in regards to if there were an 18 games season that could potentially happen with 2 bye weeks. But I think with 17, I think they need to do it already, especially with the turnover of guys playing on Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday night. Just go ahead and give everybody an extra bye week so they can be healthy and recover and get ready to play.
I love this idea. I think you could make the case that it's really silly that they went to 17 games first when they're going to go to 18 games anyway. Like, I think that 18 games with 2 byes would be better for players than 17 games with 1 bye. You know what I mean?
For sure. For sure.
And no doubt about it, 16 games is a really optimal NFL schedule. It just feels right. We had it for years. Obviously, you had the NFL is going to keep increasing the number. 18's felt inevitable for a while. The move to 17 just annoys me because the stats are going to be skewed for this one stretch of time. And I think adding that extra game without the second bye is just wild. So go to 18 and do the second bye. Now, don't get me wrong, like 17 with 2 byes would be better for the players anyway. And I agree with you. I think the second bye would, and Goodell talked about it, maybe, have the Super Bowl and President's Day weekend where
then everybody can be off on Monday.
At least a portion of the country is going to get Monday off and not have to, have a Super Bowl party, and everybody's working on that Monday anyway after the Super Bowl. So, I think that all, everybody's grinding through it. So I think all that sort of makes sense, and I really like the idea. I think if you're going to, it would probably be the first thing that I would think about doing if I were commissioner, honestly, because I think if you just gave the players 2 byes with the 17 weeks, it would make it so much easier to go to 18 weeks, and it would be like and they'll probably do this in the next CBA, be like, well, we're going to introduce the bye in the name of player safety and act like it's like a grand gesture to the players. Like the last CBA, when
here's a treat for you.
we're not going to suspend anyone a year for smoking weed anymore. It's like, well, gee, that's nice. That's something that you should have done anyway. I think it's hard to find things that you would do as a commissioner too. Like you said, where you'd be like, I'm going to get rid of the franchise tag. It's like, no, you're not going to let you do that. You're going to get fired.
You got to put the business hat on and take the personal feelings out of it, because the NFL is a business. So that's why I was like, originally I would take out Thursday night football, but I'm like, that doesn't benefit us, right? We're going to lose money if we do that.
So instead of doing that,
yeah, exactly. Instead of that, let's give the players an extra week to recover, rehab, and get ready for a 17, 18, week schedule.
I love it. Okay. Let's we got this, you're Goodell, you're in the office, 345 Park Avenue. We mentioned the 18 games.
Yeah.
What are you going to do if you're a commissioner and the proposal comes across from the owners? The owners say, we want more money. We're not rich enough. Go get us 18 games. What do you do?
Well, let me preface this by saying this right now. The current CBA, I think, runs through
2030,
I think 2030. Yeah. So right now, nothing can be done until at least 2029 as far as negotiations. So that being said, we have at least 5, maybe 6 years before this could even be brought to the table. Right now, I would say no. And I say this because if you look at just last year alone, at least 13 teams heading into week 17 had a backup quarterback in the starting role, right? Mm-hmm. And we know this. The quarterbacks are the face of the NFL. There was no Kirk Cousins. There was no Joe Burrow. The Steelers and Browns had backup quarterbacks, right? The Falcons were, in quarterback purgatory last year. So, my thing is, a lot of it was, there were a couple that were performance-based, but most of them were injury-based, right? So, you want your faces of the league out there. And with another game, which, we just talked about, is most likely going to happen anyway. We'll see what happens in 2030. But you put your players at more risk for potentially getting hurt with an extra game, right? Now, again, if there's 2 bye weeks, then players, may be more apt or more comfortable to do it. The only thing that sucks is, and this is me putting my commissioner hat to the side just for a second and putting, UDFA Leger Douzable helmet back on. There's going to be less opportunity for guys that are late round draft picks and undrafted free agents, because if you go 18 game schedule, you're probably only going to do 2 preseason games. Now, the frontline guys are not playing in a 3 preseason game, but some guys that are at the bottom of that roster need that 3rd preseason game to make the team. When I came out, if I didn't have that 4th preseason game, I don't know if I would have made the team my rookie year or second year, honestly. So just imagine those guys not only getting 2 opportunities, and some coaches are sticklers. They feel like their frontline guys need to get at least a series of 2. So that's 2 or 3, that's a quarter right there that's not going to be played by guys that are at the back half of the roster or undrafted free agents, in regards to making a great impression to try to make an NFL team. Because even if you don't make your team, there's what they always say, there's 31 others watching that same film as well. So right now, as commissioner, I'm going to say no, just because it was literally backup quarterback carousel last year. And with an extra game, we put those players at risk from potentially getting hurt. We want our star players in the playoffs. We don't want them on the sideline. So that's going to hurt us money-making wise in the long run. Now, again, short term, you'll make more money because it's an extra week, right? But I think when you don't have the franchise guys out there, you don't have the faces of the league out there in a Joe Burrow or Kirk Cousins, I think it hurts the product overall.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how the league handles this because, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm not misremembering this, but the league wasn't supposed to expand the playoffs. It wasn't supposed to expand the season to 17 games based on the CBA. It just sort of said, here's what we're doing. And the NFLPA was like, whoa, you can't do that without our permission. It's like, well, we're going to. And if you want to sue us for it, because ultimately it does equate to more money for players technically because you're expanding the pie. Now, I think that was the selling point. So I'll be very curious to see how long the NFL waits to go to 18 games. I also think you can make the case that with the league, all these extra international games create so much crazy travel for these players. I mean, we're talking, like Friday, the Eagles in Brazil, for Eagles and Packers in Brazil, the open season. You got to come, and that's not as far. But I mean, it's you're still like crossing the. Yeah, I mean,
it's different time zones, though.
Yeah. And you got Germany built in there, and these teams are choosing not to use their buys because they're giving them the option. Like, do you want to have your buy after the international thing? A lot of teams aren't doing it, that is crazy how much that is like compacting the schedules for all of these players. And so I'll be curious to see if they try to expand it even more in order to make sure that they get an extra bye week for the players coming off the international stuff.
Yeah. Just what Roger Goodell was kind of saying, if you've heard him, like he wants to expand it even more, Will. So don't be surprised if, the NFL eventually gets into Asia or other countries. And I think with that, like you just got to be cognizant of the time travel, the recovery from guys traveling from different time zones. And I know some teams hate to take those early buys because most teams that play international, like that last game is probably by the second week of October, right? So you're talking about like week 6 or 7 at the latest, maybe week 8. I can't remember that game in Germany between Seattle and Tampa Bay. I think that was like around week 8 2 years ago. But that's usually like the latest it happens, right? So a lot of teams are like, we don't want to take the bye that early, right? We don't want to take the bye week 4 or 5. But I'm like, that's a lot to ask of your players, right? To fly internationally, literally 5 or 6 hour difference in time zone, add in the flight, which is like a 9-10 hour flight flying back. And then you got to get ready to play again that Sunday. That's just a lot to ask from your teams. But, teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars who have been accustomed to doing it every year, maybe they're just a little bit more accustomed to it. Their bodies are more used to it. But yeah, I always hated having an early bye. Matter of fact, I played in London in 2015 when I was with the Jets, and we had it after week 4 and it sucked. Like the back half of that season, like just being beat up and not having an extra, bye. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I think we played a week like 12 Thursday night football games. So it's just So it's just like, and maybe that's another thing they could do. Maybe after week 8, no more Thursday night football games. But again, they're not going to do that because of the money aspect of it, of course. But it's just like you're so beat up. It literally takes you to that. Once you get to like week 8, it usually takes you to that Saturday to recover anyway, right? So just imagine getting cut off 2 or 3 days early because you got to play on that Thursday.
Yeah. We mentioned the Wednesday football as well. I mean, it's crazy. Like, I mean, I think that it really speaks to just the money thing with the NFL where they're like, we're just going to play Christmas games on Wednesday. Even though it's absolutely outrageous to roll these guys out there on Wednesday on Christmas week and have double headers, but you got Netflix bidding for the games, you got the networks bidding for the games, and so you're generating more money and more revenue, and that's why they're just not going to stop it.
Well, the NFL got a taste last year of what the NBA had kind of run forever because everybody was always excited about Christmas Day games in the NBA, and the NFL was like, you know what, we want a little bit of that money, right? And I thought it was even interesting. Not only did they do that for Christmas. Black Friday was always a college football day, right? And the NFL was like, nah, we want a piece of that too. The Jets and the Dolphins played, and it was one of the most watched games last year as well. So it's just like, once the NFL got a taste of that, they were like, we're not going back. So what we're going to do, Will, is we're going to have a couple teams play on that Saturday before, which again, cuts a day off of recovery. Then we're going to have you play on that Wednesday after the play on Christmas, just to make sure the whole nation is watching us on Christmas Day. So from the money aspect, I get it. But now you're not only are you cutting guys off the week before, but then you're cutting them off on that Wednesday in regards to them recovering and be able to be ready for the rest of the season.
Well, and it feels like there's always been sort of this like gentleman's agreement between the leagues where, the NFL wasn't going to take Christmas unless the games
that ended quickly.
On it. Yeah, that's over. Right. And then also, you have it's whatever the Congressional Act way back in the day, but it's basically like the NFL can't play on Friday, doesn't play on Friday and Saturday to avoid, taking away from, Friday night football, high school football and then college football. Well, it feels like the NFL is sort of starting to treat that with a little less interest. And I understand mainly because it's no longer like college football is college football has become such a massive money-making industry.
Yeah, and they play on different days too now.
Right. And they, these leagues are negotiating, and the college football playoff are negotiating with the same broadcast partners. And so for every dollar that college football, in other words, the NFL, I think, looks at it as you're taking some of our pie away from what like somebody like Disney or somebody like CBS or NBC, or Netflix, whoever it is, can spend on live sports. As a result, we're a little less inclined to just sit back and let you have all these days. That's why you see the NFL saying, no. We're going to put a game up against the college football playoff. Well, let's see how that goes for you guys when we drop that game and what that does for the ratings, which I think is just a really interesting maneuver from the NFL's perspective.
Yeah, I also wonder, is that why, the NCAA decided to expand the college football playoff too, right? Because now you're going to have more bites at the apple with 12 teams instead of just 4.
Yep.
And now you'll be competing with the NFL, and it'll be interesting to see which days those days actually fall on compared to the days the NFL actually plays, because it'll be like a little bit of a tug of war, right? Because now they're going to be college, as far as the fan base reach, I would say is probably a lot more vast than the NFL, right? But more people tune in to watch the NFL. So it'll be it'll be interesting to see that tug of war play out with the college football playoff and then the back half of the NFL season.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's take a quick break when we come back. Replay review. I mean, the people watching football, it won't stop. Doesn't matter what the product looks like. How would we fix it? We'll tell you next.
There are some things in life that you can't quite explain.
An extraordinary story.
Maybe it sounds flawless, looks effortless, or makes you feel like a part of history.
The first ever goal for BFC.
And when all of those phenomenons come together, it's perfect. Pitch perfect.
Presumably, when Commissioner Dews is spinning, I mean, like, do you think like the commissioners all get together? Or are they like buddy, like Adam Silver, Roger Goodell, hang out, Ron Manfred?
You know what? Because they have a very unique job. Not that there isn't unique jobs all over the world. But as far as being a commissioner of, one of the top 4 franchises, and when it comes to American sports, they may have a group chat, to be honest with you. Like, Adam, I like what you did right there. I'm thinking about implementing that in the NFL, right? Or, Roger, this is Adam. I see what you're doing over there. Maybe try it this way. I would not be surprised if they had like a little group chat, because again, very unique job where you can either be praised at any moment or scrutinized at any moment, what you do as a commissioner. So, you know what? I would love to do.
Hey, Manfred, quit with the robo-umps. You're killing me. You're killing me.
You know what?
Settle down.
We go to the Super Bowl this year. We should go to the opening night and ask Roger Goodell that question. Is he in a group chat with the other major sports commissioners? I would love to hear his response.
Gary Bettman's like not. He's like one of them's on an Android, so like they're not allowed into the group chat.
Hey, watch that!
No, that's right. You're an Android guy. So is Harry. That's fine. I've got like my brother's an Android guy. I've got like John Breach is an Android guy. I've got like a million Android guys in my. I only had one of my friends shamed, like group chat shamed into like converting to an iPhone. I think his wife mostly did it. But anyway, we digress. If you were running the NFL, what would you do about replay? When we think about missed calls, all this stuff. I sort of think that Roger Goodell, to a degree, kind of embraces it and likes the fact that it brings controversy into the league, that it brings eyeballs. At the same time, it's also you talk about the group of NFL owners, I think have more say than into what rules changes we're going to have than other leagues maybe, and typically tend to be a little less aggressive in trying to be progressive and make these rule changes. And that's why you still have, like they could flip the switch and have microchips tracking footballs, et cetera, et cetera. We've got the technology. They just seem to sort of be hesitant to actually use it.
Well, I think it's because they like the human element of it, right? There's a human element to potentially missing a call or making the right call, and maybe they just don't want to make it so robotic, I guess is a word that we could put out there. Well, but when I look at this, right, and gambling has been such a big add-on or preference when it comes to sports, right? So like when it comes to, replays on certain calls, like it has a big moment in regards to whether, somebody could potentially gets paid or somebody doesn't get paid, right?
Yep.
Or whether the house has to pay out or not. So when I look at it, and I remember a few years ago when the NFL decided to do replays on certain calls like PI, roughing the passer. I think the PI one is just so subjective. It's so tough. But I think that, and this is not me just being a defensive line, like we've seen examples of just god awful roughing the passer calls, and they've gotten out of control. Like one that comes to mind was 2 years ago when Grady Jarrett sacked Tom Brady down in Tampa, and they threw the penalty on that play, which Atlanta had an opportunity to come back and win that game, but it gave Tampa the opportunity to get a first down and run some more clock off, and Atlanta ended up losing that game when they were making a comeback in the second half. So it's like calls like that when it's like a routine tackle and you throw a flag just because a defensive lineman or a linebacker didn't gently place a quarterback on the ground, I think it's absurd. I think those should be quick replays where you should have somebody maybe in New York looks at it and says, no, that's not roughing the passer. This is the definition of, and this has been the issue with all these calls, Will. They're so subjective, right? Like you probably ask 10 different refs what roughing the passer is. You'll probably get 10 different answers from 10 different refs, right? Because one week it'll be called this week. The next week it'll be called this way. So that's the thing. It's the gray area. I think that's the part that really has fans upset, the gray area on subjective calls. There needs to be a clear-cut rule for what roughing the passer is, because, again, not only does it give the opponent a first down, but depending on the situation and scenario in the game, it allows them to run more clock off, right? Gives them more bites at the apple on offense. And we know scoring was down last year in the NFL. We know this is an offensive league. So it's always funny to see when rules are implemented, how they kind of always shift towards the offensive side, right? So like as commissioner, again, I think people are going to tune in regardless whether offenses are scoring 40 points or whether they're scoring 20 points, right? Because last year proved that scoring was down and people still showed up and showed out in abundance, right? So my thing is with the roughing the passer calls, it doesn't need to be a drawn out thing where it's 3 or 4 minutes, right? Call somebody in New York. They get all different angles on the replay. If it's not a clear cut roughing the passer call, all right, pick the flag up. Let's play football.
Well, and the good news is, of course, we have they did add it this offseason where you have but it has to be purely objective. It has to be like, was the quarterback out of the pocket? Was the quarterback hit in the head? It can't be. It can't be one where it's like in that gray area. They can review the ones that are, if it's just a mistake that was made. And look, I think one thing I would do if I was in charge of it, I would say, look, we need to crank up replay. And how about you invest in replay? Invest in putting a bunch of, because I think this is an obvious mistake by the NFL. When you have all these games happening on Sunday in the 1 o'clock windows and the 1 o'clock and the 4 o'clock windows, you can tell there's not as much eye in the sky replay review. When it's an island game, a playoff game, or a Monday Night Football game, whatever it is, they always seem to get those buzz in much more often. I think it's because the guys at the league office are stretched too thin and don't see everything that's happening. Assign 3 people. You are a $14 billion business. Like hire 3 dudes who will watch football and say, hold on, wait, that's not quite there. You train them up on the rules and have them buzz in and make life easier for the referees. I think one of the things that the league has done really poorly is just put too much on these referees' plates. So now, they're being asked to officiate all these different nuanced things while also trying to get the correct call, and it just results in a lot of poorly officiated games, and that's unfair to the referees who typically do a fairly good job.
Yeah, and the thing about that is, well, you know this, anytime something gets implemented, like they make an emphasis on calling that early in the season and
Yes.
throughout the season, right? So there's almost like an overreaction to something that gets implemented. I think there has to be a regulation where that doesn't happen in the beginning of the year, because even though the playoffs have expanded to 7 games, like each game matters even much more, right? Because
Yeah.
people are vying for playoff spots. People are vying just to get into the playoffs. So like I talked about that Falcons and Bucks game, like that had ripple effects for the rest of the season in regards to Atlanta potentially trying to fight to get into the playoffs. So I'm with you. That's why I said I think they should have somebody in New York, whether it's multiple guys, because you, like you said, you almost put the refs in a lose-lose situation with some of these calls, because again, they're subjective and the ref has to call it. But anything that's subjective or gray area, you can't properly call it because it's up to the discernment of the ref, right? So it's just like, and it's all about how he was taught to call the play, right? So like one guy might think it's, there's a roughing call. The next guy might think it's not a roughing call. It just depends on how the ref feels that day. And I think that's the issue and why fans have been really upset with the roughing.
And then you also have, like the rule was, I think it was last year they implemented it. It's like, we're going to really focus on taunting. It's like, really? That's what you need to focus on?
We're 5 years old.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if people are saying things on the field that are, wildly inappropriate, or you have some really aggressive, like unsportsmanlike behavior, that's one thing. But to make that a focus when these officials are already struggling to get everything right, it was just crazy to me. But that's such is life in the NFL. All right, jerseys. Wait, were you were part of the colorblind game?
I was part of the colorblind game. The Jets Thursday night versus the Bills. Yeah, it was interesting because I saw all these tweets after the game. I didn't know what people were talking about. They were like, we could barely see who was what. I'm like, how could you barely see? One team is clearly all red. The other team is clearly like lime green. Like, so it's like, how could you not tell? And I guess it was something on the TV where people were like,
I think Greg Rosenthal, a friend of the show who works at NFL Media, is, I believe, colorblind, and he's like, "This is hell on earth." He's like, "This is my job, and I can't tell which team is which."
Yeah, and we did it. We ended up doing it one more time that next season in 16. I think they took it away because it was so interesting. Because I played for the Jets in 2015 when we had the quote unquote colorblind game, and then the next year we played the Jets week 2, and it was the colorblind game again, but it was up in Buffalo this time. So it's crazy. I was played on each side of the color.
Oh, that is crazy. Yeah,
so I have the all red and I have the all green jersey.
That's awesome. And Harry points out that his dad is also red and green colorblind. I think it's a specific type of colorblindness. You're right. So it's
that's what I couldn't understand. I was like, these are clearly 2 different colors. Like, how can you not see them on TV?
I didn't understand either. That's wild. So you have both of those jerseys still?
I have both of those jerseys.
Oh, that's cool.
I actually have them in the. I don't have them up here, but I have them in frames. They're in the garage right now.
That's awesome. Those are quality. Those are high quality jerseys to have. Sure. I want a thing with the jerseys where, like, I'm all for being creative and being different with the jerseys. Yeah. I like the idea though that let's implement these throwbacks, the really good throwbacks.
Man, heck yeah.
Like we talked about on the show with the Broncos revealing the new jerseys. Those Broncos throwbacks are sweet. I don't need the new Broncos jerseys. I don't need
the new ones are god awful.
Awful. I don't need new jerseys every 3 years. Give me some quality throwbacks.
It was that all orange and call it a day, man.
Yeah, and if I'm commissioner too, you know who gets the Titans jerseys back? The Oilers jerseys back? Houston, the city of Houston. Yeah.
That would be interesting, right? Because there's always like this little rivalry between both of them because they're both in the AFC South. And then Tennessee Titans fans will say, you guys really don't have any history. Like, your history is our history. And so, like, people always wonder, like, should the Texans technically get the Oilers' old jerseys, or should the Titans get the Oilers' jerseys? So we saw the Jets change things up. They went old school this year for their jerseys.
I think they look good.
They look really good. So, when we were talking about this segment and they had it in a rundown, I was like, I think every team should have 3 combos, but then they should have 3 alternates as well, right? Now, the color rush they haven't done as prevalent as they were in the past, but I think like each team should be able to wear their throwbacks at least twice during the season. Like that powder blue for the Chargers. Oh, it's
beautiful. Yeah.
Fire.
It's the best. It's the best jersey. It's the best jersey in like sports. I mean, like
for sure.
I mean,
you remember the orange not the orange, but the yellow and brown old Broncos uniforms.
Yeah, real old school. Right? Yeah. I know. I'm all for throwbacks. Give me all the throwbacks that you can handle. Super Bowl, got to address that, of course. If you're NFL commissioner, 2 questions for the Super Bowl. 1, would you move it to President's Weekend and petition Congress to give America a Monday off as a holiday, or just make it like make every employer give Monday off? I mean, it's like 90 million people watch it. Yeah, it's a holiday. Give it a holiday. And then 2, with the Super Bowl halftime show. I think you've got an idea that I've always liked the idea of keeping it local, right? I mean,
sure.
Right?
Yeah. So definitely, I think that's going to be done. I think Roger Goodell said it multiple times that he eventually wants to move it back to President's Day to give most of the country, if not all the country, that Monday off. Because like you said, the Super Bowl is a holiday, and it brings literally everybody together. Because even if you're not a big football fan, it's usually a gathering, and then people tune in for the halftime show, and then people literally tune in just for the commercials, right? Yep. People forget that element. The Super Bowl has the best commercials at any part of the year, right? There's big ad dollars thrown into Super Bowl commercials. So I'm like you, I always like to keep it local. I love that, a couple years ago it was in LA. They had Kendrick Lamar and, Dr. Dre and Snoop and all those guys came out. Last year in Vegas, Usher, a guy who had a residency in Vegas, so it made a lot of sense. So this year it's in New Orleans. So I think it would only be right if Dwayne Carter, Lil Wayne, comes out, performs, but then we throw it back. He brings all the cash money out with him. But not only that, Will, we bring the No Limit Soldiers out too, man.
Oh my Lord, just a real throwback.
I just think you got to keep it local, and I think that would be a really good show. And wouldn't even be surprised if Lil Wayne, under Cash Money, had Young Money records. If he brings Drake or Nicki Minaj out for a song or two, that would be big. Now, since it's about making money as well, right? There is a superstar player that is dating another superstar right now in Taylor Swift.
Yes.
So we couldn't get the things done with Lil Wayne. I'm going bang for buck here. Miss Taylor Swift, we welcomed you into the NFL life. You brought all the Swifties with you. We brought you in with open arms. Could you do us this solid, right? Especially if the Chiefs go to the Super Bowl. Could you do us this solid and perform for us at halftime, right? Just that alone would make that the most watched Super Bowl ever in history.
Well, the only thing that would top it is if either Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift had just gotten engaged, or if they just broke up and she's debuting new songs about Travis Kelce at halftime of Travis Kelce playing in the Super Bowl. I'd be petrified if I was Travis Kelce that you're sitting at halftime. Oh my God! I think it would
and half the crowd hates you.
Yeah. It would if Taylor Swift performed at halftime of the Super Bowl, it would be, and she turned it down last year, I think, knowing that it would be a little awkward too. By the way, I mean, if you're going to accept that, you have to be really confident where your relationship stands, because otherwise it's just. And you almost, if you're the Chiefs, you're like, man, we want this three-peat. But if you're Kelce, I was like, I don't know if I want to deal with all this.
He's got to literally lock in and go to another realm. His mental can't be anywhere near all the nonsense that's going there. He's got to lock in if that were to happen, like it was a breakup or something. Because, good Lord, he's going to be a hated man.
But he might also go out and score 3 touchdowns in the Super Bowl and just be like, look what you're missing. All right.
I love that.
We've gotten through a lot on your first day here as commissioner.
Yeah.
You get to make one more change, something that, just a pet peeve, a hobby horse, something that you've always thought about the NFL that you would want to change. It's not it doesn't have to be a high level item here.
Yeah. I just think we got to remember, Will, that football is a physical game. It's part of the reason why people tune in each week, the warrior mentality, right? I'm all about player safety, right? But this is what separates football from every other sport. And I don't know if you've been on X lately. There's been a big debate about whether NBA players can play in the NFL or NFL players can play in the NBA. And I always say this: the Oklahoma drill makes NBA players or makes basketball players because and for people that don't know what the Oklahoma drill
is, they don't want to deal with it.
There's 2 different versions. Usually it's an O lineman, D lineman, head up, a running back and linebacker. And at the snap, everybody just collides into each other. The linebacker tries to tackle the running back tries to evade them, and the O lineman tries to block the defensive lineman. And there's another version where you're literally laying on your back. As soon as the whistle blows, you both have to get up. There's two guys. One guy blocks. One guy is trying to defeat the block. Then there's another linebacker and running back, and they go at it, right? That drill, we always like to say as football players, make basketball players.
Right.
Those are the drills where guys are like, nah, this isn't for me. I'm not about this life.
I'm getting the layup line, yeah.
Yeah. Or they're counting dudes in line to see who they're going to go against, right?
Yeah.
That is what makes basketball players, essentially. So I thought it was hilarious that Austin Rivers was saying that 30 guys could potentially play in the NFL. And he was like, we've seen examples of it. My thing is, he brought up a couple tight ends. Let's not forget that Antonio Gates was like an all-state, I think almost all-American tight end. Like he could have played anywhere at tight end in football, but he wanted to play basketball. He wanted to go to a school where he could play both, right? So let's not forget that. Tony Gonzalez, same thing. He was like all-state in football too. So like you using those guys as example make no sense. I might give you the Jimmy Graham one because I think Jimmy played in high school, but he didn't play football, I think, until his like senior or junior year at Miami, right? But he still has a background of playing football, right? So I think the physical mentality, I know a lot of NBA players took offense to that, but it's real, right? Because you got to look at how the NBA is officiated and how guys are like, there's flopping in the NFL, but it's not like the NBA. Like the only time you can flop in the NFL literally is like around the pile when a guy like kind of like you might shove a guy and then you wait for him to retaliate and then you just like flop back to get a. But in NBA, like you're flopping while you're dribbling the ball. You're flopping while you're playing. Like if you do that in the NFL and you give up a touchdown, that's on you. Like you know what I'm saying. At worst, you're giving up 2 points, but in the NFL, it could go for a touchdown. So there's no flopping, right? So I just think the mentality's a lot different, right? So I'm not saying there's guys that could, be in the NFL and could go play in the NBA right now. I think that's absurd to think. Just like I think it's absurd for guys to think they could leave the NBA right now and go play football. So
I thought Chris Long had a great take on it, where he said, "Dude, like NBA players aren't making it through training camp. You're getting screened out by coaches. It through
1 day of training camp,
right? It's like 95 degrees. You're in like full pads. You're sweating. You're getting screamed at. You're like and it's just insanely physical. And it's a different lifestyle. It's a different game, and it's just way more physical. And then the other thing, like I think it was Kendrick Perkins like gave out a list.
Yeah,
like, my number one one. He's like Jalen Suggs. It's like what Jalen Suggs? What are you talking about? He's like he
was a good quarterback, but you thinking he could be a quarterback in the NFL right now?
Yeah, like if you're going to make the argument, I think you have to. The only way to make the argument for NBA players who could potentially be immediate NFL players is they would be a tight end who jumps in, is a red zone threat at a tight end.
And that's split him out. He's not blocking or any of that.
Right. And you're not blocking. And even that is just to assume you're just going to like pick up, like learn a playbook and run routes all of a sudden. I mean, come on.
Perfect example. Draymond Green went out for the football team. And I remember there was a clip where they split him out and a DB that was half his size hemmed him up at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like basketball, you can't do that. We can actually put our hands on you in football. So there's the mentality that's different right now. Again, I think you have to take it with a grain of salt because I think what he was referencing, and I don't want to speak for Austin Rivers, is like guys that would train for like, probably maybe up to a year to be able to do it. Because that's what those other guys had to do. But I think there's probably good enough athletes that maybe if a NFL guy trained for basketball just for a year, he could maybe be the 10th or 11th guy on the bench.
I think if you gave certain NFL players, and again, were you a good? Did you play basketball before? Like, can you shoot?
Correct. A guy like T. Higgins. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I mean, it also depends on like if you're talking about 10 years ago, it would have been totally different because you could have big guys who jump in there as power forwards or centers.
Correct.
Now you're gonna need to be a shooter, like a
sure.
a 3-and-D guy. I mean, it's just a different game. But I think there's plenty of NFL players if you gave them a year to train and play basketball where they could make the transition. Same thing with basketball players, but it's not going to be this like the NBA. The NBA players aren't just leaving to go be NFL players. They ain't have to. It would go poorly. I would. I'm trying to think if I would change anything. I think I would like to see. I want some funky. Like I want the 4th and 25 thing instead of onside
You want
kicks.
the XFL thing?
I want the XFL rule.
UFL,
You can the UFL where you can go for it on 4th and 25 to try and pick up at the end of games. I think that would it would change strategy. It would bring so much into play, and it would be insane to watch that sort of thing happening. I'd like to see it for a season just to see how it was reviewed, how it was embraced by the NFL, how it was embraced by fans, and how it was embraced by teams. And I think if they like it, I think it's something we could see more long term.
Yeah, it would definitely make, I think, the game a little bit more exciting from the fan perspective. I don't know if players would love it as much because I think there's something to be said, like throughout the game when you're beating somebody down. Now all of a sudden they can go for it on 4th and 25 and get the ball back twice. We saw that literally in a UFL this year where a team was down by 2 scores, but we're able to come back because of the 4th and 20-25 rule. So it's just like, on one hand, yes, it would bring a little bit more excitement, fan base wise, but players would be like, this is some BS. We've been whooping them all game long, and then they convert to 4th and 20-25s. Now they're right back in the game.
No, that's fair. It's like you feel like, especially if you're a fan watching it and your team's up 2 scores, you're thinking, all right, we had this game in hand.
Correct.
And all of a sudden, the 4th and 25. Although it feels like the modern NFL, we get these comebacks like every week anyway, where it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much you're up. The other team is like in the game. All right, Commissioner Dews, great job as always, buddy. That'll do it for us. Way to fix the NFL in like 45 minutes or less. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, dudes. We'll like I mentioned, we'll be back for the schedule. Then we got a few weeks where we're taking a break, little vacation, and but obviously keep subscribing, keep reviewing. Dudes, pleasure, buddy.
Already, Brinson.
All right, for Dudes, I'm Brinson. We'll see you guys later.